being a touring musician is very, very competitive, and you got to be a high performer. And the only way to get yourself in that high performer mode is to be limiting the distractions around you and have your physical and mental health really dialed in.
What's up, guys? Happy Thursday. What if I told you that being a national laser tag champion could prepare you for a career in dance music? It sounds crazy, right? But today's guest, Henry Fong, makes a fascinating point about success. The patterns that make someone excellent at one thing often show up in completely different domains. Whether it's the focus needed to win a fishing tournament, as Henry has, the discipline required to master martial arts, or the dedication it takes to build a career in dance music, the blueprint for excellence remains surprisingly similar. Henry opens up about growing up in a small Florida town, how his early competitive experiences shaped his mindset, and why understanding these universal patterns of success might be more valuable than any industry-specific knowledge. If you've ever wondered whether your non-musical experiences are relevant to your artist career, this conversation will completely change your perspective. Let's get into it. First, what I didn't know, and I recently just learned from doing some research, is that you're a UCF alum, and so am I.
You're a UCF alum? Go Knights.
Only online, so I don't know if that counts, but I was living in Florida and going to school online.
No, that absolutely counts.
Okay, as long as an actual UCF alum says it, then I'll take it. So you started this journey like promoting in college. When did you realize that this was going to be more than just a side hustle for you?
I think at a certain point, I think I was closer to my junior year of college, I forget. And I started one night, and then the one night, next thing I know, I was DJing Wednesday through Saturday, basically every single week. And I was like, kind of calculating the money. And I was like, my friends that are just graduating now, they have entry level office jobs and stuff. And I'm like, I'm making the same amount of money. And I get to work a lot less and get to work on something that I'm passionate about. And I just kind of like actually analyzed it in that way. And I was like, this checks out, And I was like, I think I can make this happen. I was like, all I got to do is increase my brand and my profile, build my socials, release more music, and then I can make even more money. And so I think, when you're a college student and you're told that you have to go get a certain specific career, you kind of have to think about it in that way. And it kind of financially has to make sense. So when I started DJing 4 nights a week, I knew I was like, okay, if I do these things, then I think this could be real,
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. And that's got to be, I imagine there was some fear there as, our parents all sent us off to college, 15, 16 years ago, wanted us to, like, I have immigrant parents and they wanted me to, fulfill the American dream, like go to school and then do the thing I got my degree in. Did you experience any of that at all?
Yeah. My dad's family, they came from China. And so they were very much like, you have to study, you have to get good grades, you have to go to college. And my dad worked for the government. My dad worked in the Pentagon, actually, for the Air Force. And so he was very disciplined and thought that the best path to, freedom was to go potentially work for the government and put in, decades in the government. And then the government will take care of you with, pensions and great benefits and stuff like that. And that was kind of what he did. And that's what he thought.
Yeah. And I, when I was doing some research and just from what I've seen from like your mentorship program and stuff, the word discipline, I feel like is a theme that has come up a lot in your life. And I want to talk about that because I think that discipline is the key differentiator from being successful and not. And I think it's something that people tend to overlook. They think talent will take them far, but discipline is such an important ingredient. So what does that word discipline mean to you?
I mean, I just think it's just putting in the same reps and being consistent over a long period of time, and that's very, very difficult to put in, like that type of consistency over a long period of time. And a lot of people don't really understand how much work is really needed to get things to that next level. And people underestimate the amount of work it actually takes and the amount of focus it actually takes. And I think one of the things that taught me that was like, I had these like weird, like hobby side quests when I was younger. And so I'll tell you a funny story. One of them was actually laser tag, and I was a national champion laser tag team in my early teens.
Really?
And we had for, I think, 3 years, 4 years, we had an undefeated, I was on an undefeated, on my Florida team, and we were undefeated national laser tag champions. And it's just started, my mom, which has dropped me off at these birthday parties, because back in the day, in like the 90s, the 90s, like that was the thing to do, is you go to laser tag for birthdays and you go to the roller skating rink or whatever, right? And so every weekend I was getting dropped off to these laser tag birthday parties for school friends and stuff. And I ended up getting really good at laser tag. And then I would say, hey, can I actually go on the weekends? And, my mom would give me $10 and I would just go play laser tag all Friday night or whatever. And I kind of saw how much time that we had to put in to this laser tag thing to become national 4-time champions or whatever it was.
Wow.
And the type of discipline and training and planning, and it was like a very competitive sport. And it was at the thing, we went to tournaments all over the US. We were going to Michigan, and we were going to Colorado, and then we were going to California. I think I was like 16 years old, maybe 15. And so I saw that type of discipline going there. And then I also was a very avid fisherman growing up my whole life too, living in Florida. And a couple times I broke a junior world record one time, although the scale wasn't officially properly and some things happened. So I was really, really into fishing, and I've caught some amazing trophy fish over the years in saltwater. And so the level of discipline that goes into something like fishing, you have to be very focused. You have to be very consistent. You have to show up on the days. Like a lot of days you show up and you don't catch any fish. And so these two things, I think, really taught me the discipline required of what it is to be world class at something. I know it's silly and it's just laser tag, but we were world class at this particular laser tag game. And I was borderline world class at, catching fish in my area, I guess you could say.
Those are insanely cool hobbies, and I miss laser tag dearly. And the simplicity of it, of that activity, but also the anxiety. Like I remember obviously not being just being in the dark and like, wait, oh my God, that was such a fun game. But it's true, because it's like any other team sport, right? Like that's why people put their kids into sports, so they can learn those leadership skills, how to work with others. Those things are so important. And I didn't realize that till later in life, because I am the least coordinated person on the planet. Like I did not make any team as hard as I tried. And I realized that I missed out on some of those skill building things in my youth that are crucial. So when was it that you connected the dots between like the discipline in your side quest hobbies to music? And how did you realize like, wow, this really shaped my ability to go after music?
I think it's when you find something you can just do this deep focus on. Like I remember when I really started getting into music in college, it hit a point where I was like, everybody leave me alone. I'm sitting home. I'm making music. It's Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday. I don't care what it is. I'm skipping things. I'm sitting here locked in on music all day. And I started to feel that deep focus again. And the same thing that I had for fishing, the same thing feeling when we were doing the laser tag competitive teams and stuff. Like you just get this deep focus where you really don't care about anything else going on, and you can just sit down and lock in. And when you have that deep focus, that's kind of when you know things are headed in the right direction, I think. And looking back on it, I think that's what it is. And also too, it's like, I can't give all the credit to myself for this. I think my dad was a great role model for discipline. He worked in the Pentagon, and he was the first one in, last one out kind of guy. And he was very disciplined. He was a bodybuilder as well too.
Wow.
He was like an amateur bodybuilder. And so the level of discipline that my dad had definitely, I think, eventually caught up to me. At first, I maybe wasn't very disciplined, but seeing my dad wake up every single day when he goes to work, he's going to the gym every day, never skipping a day in the gym, extremely disciplined guy. And I'm just like grateful to have a role model like that in my life. And I think I learned a lot of that from him.
That's huge. So you said that in college you would lock yourself in your room and work on music. There are so many like there's tons of temptresses in college. There's, especially being in Florida where it's nice out year round. Like I did undergrad at Illinois State, being in Chicago, and I mean, at least the winter we couldn't like go out all the time. But Florida's just like, it's like a playground 24/7. So how did you how were you able to manage that? Like, was there balance with the partying, or were you not really a partier?
Oh, I definitely party. I think the lifestyles just went hand in hand because the time wise. So like when I was really getting involved in music and I started to DJ, it was a nighttime thing. So like 10 p.m. onwards. So I could wake up and I could make music all day until 10 p.m. And then I go to work, DJ at night, wake up the next day, make music all day, DJ, go to my DJ gig at 10 p.m. And that was in the later part of college. So the early part of college, I was just finding my way through the world. I didn't really have any direct career aspirations or anything. I was just showing up, going to class, studying and stuff. And so I had time to like, party and hang out and meet people and do things as well too. So I think it was just the lifestyle of DJing at night and then being able to make music all day really helped me lock in on the music stuff.
And I mean, one thing that now I forget, being in my 30s, we all have a lot more energy in our 20s to be able to.
Oh yeah.
The youth lends itself to being able to do that.
For sure.
But this is a career. If my audience is primarily producers, DJs who have had some success and are, trying to find a way to get to the next level and have career sustainability and longevity, you cannot party forever. You cannot burn both ends of the candle forever. So, walk me through, because I know you work with a lot of artists, like your experience with burnout. Have you experienced it yourself, first of all?
Yeah, absolutely. I think particularly post-COVID, definitely had some burnout on touring because I had this feeling like, what am I going to do? Just get on a plane every single weekend till I'm 75 years old? Like, what am I going to do for the rest of my life? And so I definitely had some burnout. And, I have a son. He's now 10 years old. And so early on, when he's like, they're 1-2 years old, they mostly need their mom and they're not really, but now that he's older, it's like, I gotta be out there playing soccer with him and practicing with him, helping him with his school homework and things like that. So there's part of that is like, okay, how do I navigate being the best dad I can be too, but then navigating this feeling of like being on this perpetual thing where I just have to leave every weekend forever. And so I definitely had some burnout, I think, from COVID to now. And I'm just trying to find that balance of the happy medium of, playing the shows that I want to go play, that are the good shows that I feel like, but not having that feeling of I have to get on the plane every single weekend to go pay the bills.
Right.
And so finding that balance, I think, is the next chapter of my career. And, you often find some of the older DJs into their 40s and 50s, they have tons of new business endeavors and things like that too. Like if you look at some of the big DJs, like somebody like say Tiesto or Armin van Buuren, it's like they own successful record labels. They have investments in other things and stuff too. So I think the next 10 years for me looks like, I think, expanding what the Henry Fong brand is in not just being a DJ, but it's like in the music business, what does that look like?
Yeah.
So,
yeah, it's good that people hear that who listen to this show. The diversification is so important, and don't bite off more than you can chew in the beginning, but you do have to have that in the back of your mind, because as much as we want to think we'll stay young forever and we can do this forever, you can't. Like your body will not allow it. And we need to like heed the warnings from all the documentaries we've seen about rock stars, right? And like what happens when you don't take a breath.
Yeah, it's a fast paced life, and I think my first big year on tour was probably 2013 to 2014. It was just like went like from nothing to just like playing local residencies, and all of a sudden you're on a plane Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday on tour with big DJs flying around the world, and you can go hard at that for I think about maybe 4 years straight. I like grinded hard on that, and then it catches up to you. You're like, oh man, getting on a plane again. And that sounds like counterintuitive because I understand that I'm living my dream, and a lot of people would be, you know, would like to be in that situation, but at the same time, it's very hard on the body. And so you have to have that discipline again, and you have to have your specific health protocols that you do, and you just have to be very regimented in how you handle that. And so again, finding that balance is post COVID for me. That's been of, I think, the utmost importance.
Yeah. Yeah. It's huge. So, for the emerging artists who, want to incorporate that, maybe they're not there yet with like the crazy tour schedule. They haven't had that takeoff moment yet, but they do feel like they're already starting to experience burnout, which is very real. And I think there's, like you said, post COVID, because we had that long period of rest, and there's other factors that are contributing to people just getting burned out so much faster. Tell them why they should care about this now.
Well, I wish there was like a softer way to say about the burnout stuff, but I think like the most important thing that you can do if you feel burnout, you just like, if you want to be a music professional, you just have to show up repeatedly. And the days you don't want to make music, you just have to show up and try to make music. And if you do that long enough and you show up when you don't want to show up, you're eventually going to get that consistency that's going to lead to success, I think. So I think it's about getting your health stuff right. Like you got to be sleeping good. You got to limit the alcohol. You got to be healthy and exercising. And you do those things, then showing up on the bad days is a lot easier. You know, you got to be managing your sleep. The last thing that you want to do is try to be creative when you've had zero sleep and you've been, on a bender the week before. It's impossible. So I find that just limiting my alcohol, and I really started taking my like exercise habits and stuff. I've really started taking that seriously in 2020. I've always been pretty healthy, I think, health conscious and exercising, but particularly 2020 now, like I very limited alcohol when I'm touring now. I land in the hotel. If I have a show on Friday, I land in the hotel. The first thing I do, go to the gym. I'm napping. I try to making sure my tour schedule is optimized for sleep. I'm like no 6 a.m. flights, leaving straight from the club anymore, like I used to do back in the day. And so that's, to me, is finding that balance from touring hard in 2014, 15, 16, and 17 to now is just trying to figure out what that combination looks like.
Yeah.
So
yeah, it's great advice to get those things out of the way right away, because I'm the same way in the morning. I get all the annoying tasks out of the way first thing in the morning, whether it's work, whether it's laundry. If you do that, the rest of the day becomes so much easier because you're not dreading the thing. And then there's the added bonus of, if you like exercising, if you can get to a place where you can find exercise you like. And really, I think for me that it's the mental switch of understanding that I'm doing something good for my body or my mind. Like I really try to advocate for that, because it's like, no, you get to do this to make yourself healthy. You don't have to do it. So has that, like, because I mean, most touring artists that I've talked to, they have some sort of routine, but do you ever find yourself like at odds with other people that you're touring with when you're like, all right, see ya, I got to go to the gym?
Oh, all the time. All the time. I've just bail on after parties all the time. I do not go to afters anymore. That's for sure. Like I just can't do it. And it's just not worth it to me anymore. Nothing particularly good happens there anyways.
Nope.
So yeah, I've had to adjust my lifestyle. People offer you drinks. I said, no, man, not into it. So definitely you got to stand up for yourself a little bit and have some confidence in your beliefs, in this industry. But at this phase, it's like, I want to do the best job that I can do as a performer, and I want to make the best music. And to me, that requires being healthy first, So, And also too, you got to think about it is like, if you want to be successful at anything, you need to be a high performer, right? So if you want to be like being a touring musician is very, very competitive, and you got to be a high performer. And the only way to get yourself in that high performer mode is to be, limiting the distractions around you, and have your physical and mental health really dialed in so you can, perform at your best. And if you think about think about somebody, like I saw this thing the other day about like LeBron James. It's like, LeBron James, do you think he's just eating whatever he wants Monday through Friday? He's like, no, he has a dietitian and he eats a very particular diet and he has a very regimented workout routine and stuff. And so I think that's how you got to think about it if you want a long dance career. I think, you're coming into a place where there's professionals that have been doing this for many years. So if you want to if you're a new artist and you're hopping into the ring with a bunch of professionals and guys that this is all they do is create music, make content, fly around, play shows. And so you got to put yourself in that high performer mode, And I think, again, it comes back to, finding that balance of everything that works for you, because everybody's going to have something different, a different cocktail that works for them,
Right. Yeah. There is no one formula, but everything that you're talking about, I feel like, again, people think that, talent is going to take them so far, but all of these things that seem unrelated to music aren't. Treating your body right, limiting alcohol, getting adequate sleep, these all impact your ability to show up as your best self. And because of this life, like if we were talking about a different industry here, like, I don't know, IT or like anything else, I think it wouldn't be that difficult to have this conversation. But
Yeah,
I
totally.
personally hear a lot of excuses from people like, well, I have to show face at this and I have to do that. And it's like, but it's not all or nothing. You can set boundaries around what you decide to engage in.
A lot of people get sucked into the matrix of, party life, nightlife stuff, which it's fun. I definitely did it in the beginning of my career for sure. But to a certain point though, yeah, if you want to survive beyond, the first 4 years, it takes a lot more than that, I think.
Yeah. Yeah. And no one can take your discipline away from you, which is a really cool thing. So as a mentor to other artists, I know that you work with them on their music, but do these themes come up when you're working with artists?
All the time. So my approach is, it's like I have a little bit of a 3-part framework, I think, which creates successful artists. And so there's 3 things you kind of need to do competently to get success, I think, in this industry. And the first category is obviously music. The second category is your brand and your marketing. And the third category is kind of like the business side, industry side of things, right? And so I kind of look at it like you're a video game player, right? And you pick a character, and it's like, speed, power, and agility.
Mm-hmm.
And so different characters have different speed, power, agility. But so if you're a musician and you want to be a successful musician, you kind of got to look at these 3 categories and you got to see, what am I doing really well and what am I not doing well? Because I know people, for example, that have 10 out of 10 music and they have a 2 out of 10 on the business side of things, and their careers don't pan out, right? And so for myself, I look at my music side, and I actually think my music side is a little bit on the weaker, although maybe some people don't think that. But in my head, maybe I'm like, say, a 6 or 7 out of 10 on music, but I feel like I've made it up hustling and grinding hard and showing up on things like on that business category or maybe in that marketing category. And I've done a lot of little extra work to kind of supplement my lack of music training, because I'm not a classically trained musician at all. When I started making music, I didn't even know what an 8 count was. I can't play the piano. I didn't know any of that. So I felt like I had to make that up in other ways. And I grinded really hard on the business side, and I grinded really hard on marketing and brand as well too. So I think if you want to be a successful musician, you got to look at those 3 categories and say, okay, what categories need work, and where can I get that unfair advantage at and put in that extra time? Some people it's going to be the music. Some people they might be really good at social media. Some people might know everybody and have the craziest social network, right? And those little things, if you can think about those 3 categories and bring those 3 categories up to close to a 10 out of 10 as you can get them, you're just going to be, it's the triple threat, and you're going to have the best chances, I think, of success.
Wow. Yeah. And I love that you said that, because I think it gives some artists a little bit of permission to not be so hard on themselves when it comes to the technical skill, because that's something that, I've personally heard a lot of producers be self-conscious of. And it's like, well, I know that you make hilarious videos, or you are just a really nice, like I've seen you interact with people. It's tough when this is art, it's subjective, but I can imagine it's cutthroat being a producer and you're constantly comparing yourself to other people's art. So what changes have you seen in artists when you do they have that like light bulb moment where they're like, oh, like I never thought of this before?
I think one of the main things is on the social media category. I think that a lot of people are intimidated by that at this moment in time. And a lot of the artists that I've worked with, they all are really struggling with that social media thing. And what I think that something that really helps on that is the mental block is social media is it's a teachable thing, right? So if you looked at social media and marketing yourself the same way you looked at how you learn to make music, right? So if you learn to make music, you start going on YouTube and you learn how Ableton or whatever works. Maybe you go to an online music school and you gain the knowledge via learning to learn how to make music, right? And then people get to social media and they're like, oh, let me just chuck up a post. And they haven't researched it or watched any videos on how to edit. How do you edit videos properly for the algorithm, or how do you do XYZ? And they don't put the same type of learning into it. But I think social media, it's just a learned skill as well too. The same way, like you open up Ableton for the first time and you don't know how to use it, it's like super intimidating. You're like, what is this software? And like, imagine not really wanting to make content. You open up Instagram and you're like, oh, you got to make a reel today to promote your music. You're going to be like, oh, this is intimidating. But if you went online and there's social media courses out there, there's editing courses out there, there's all kinds of things out there where you can learn how to make really good content and engage in content and get views. And it's just a teachable skill, the same way it is to learn music. So I think that's a big mental block for a lot of artists right now, where if you put in the time to learn how to create good content, you can get the views and you can change your music career if you put the work in. And I think that's knowing that that's just a learnable skill you can learn like anything else, I think is pretty cool.
Yeah, that's a great point. And, once you learn something like social media, it's not hard forever. It comes to you faster, like coming up with content ideas, figuring out your editing flow. I mean, even with this podcast, having it for more than a year, figuring out the best cadence of like the long form versus what should be in the short form, and like how should I tweak it? It took a lot of iteration, a lot of testing, and I'm still finding my stride, but it comes a lot easier today than it did in June of 2023. So like you said, it's all about just putting in the reps and having patience. Yeah. Yeah. So what habits, like what can artists take away from today's conversation, the habits that have been game changing for you over the past couple of years?
I think one thing that was really game changing for me, it's kind of an industry secret, but it's not really a secret. It's kind of common sense, and people don't think about things this way. I think there's a lot of artists out there that get really hit songs, right? The big artists, and they're just continually getting hit songs. And it's like, why do these artists continually dominate? It's like, well, these artists have access to a different tier of vocalists and top line writers on songs than if you're stepping in the ring. So imagine you're an upcoming DJ and you're hopping in the ring and you're going to try to compete with all the A-list DJs on Spotify. It's going to be really tough. But these artists, all they have is access to the best producers in the world, and they have access to the best songwriters in the world. And the key word is the songwriting and the vocals, because that's what really makes the hits for the most part, right? Even the pop dance stuff, even pop radio, that's what the vocals are usually in the top line, is where the hit comes from, I think. And so something that changed the game for me is like, okay, if I'm coming in and I'm just using splice samples, or I'm not learning songwriting, I'm trying to compete in this arena with people that are using the top songwriters in the world, right? And so I kind of figured that out halfway through my career. So getting more creative with sampling, learning songwriting skills, developing my ear for pop music, those three things, I'm lucky enough to work side by side in the studio with one of my good friends, Dallas K, who taught me a lot about what I know about the pop music world. And that awakening, I think, has helped me write music that kind of is able to stick out, because you don't have to be this crazy technical producer and know how to make these like insane sounds. Yes, that's great. And that helps in certain genres, like say dubstep or drum and bass. But broadly speaking, if you want to make big music, focusing in on the vocals that you're using on your songs and increasing your ability to be a better songwriter is going to yield you, I think, the biggest bang for the buck results in your music. And
Wow.
that to me was game changing when I figured that out. And that sounds obvious, right? But if you
No,
think about it,
I've interviewed hundreds of DJs. I've never heard that before.
so if you think about it, if I just get a kick drum, a bass line, and I get a fucking amazing top line and I put it on there, that's going to yield me a better bang for the buck in my career than sitting there twisting this knob on serum for 3 hours. Do you know what I'm saying?
Sure. Yeah.
So
Yeah,
that was the number one game changer. I think that I realized that I think could really help artists out there.
Wow. That makes a lot of sense. And just like learning social media, you can learn anything now on YouTube. I mean, you're not necessarily like going to get the best knowledge if it's free, but you really can learn anything these days. You don't have to go to school for something. And that's like I said, I've interviewed hundreds of DJs, never heard that before.
Look at the best, most dominant producers in dance music, right? Like the David Guettas and the Diplos of the world. Do you think they're sitting there in the computer twisting serum for 18 hours? Maybe a little bit, but what they're primarily focused on is the idea of the song. And I can guarantee you when they go into these sessions with these big A-list singers, they're contributing to writing the song a lot too. And the song is so important. And so they're probably writing lyrics and helping out with the melodies here and there, rearranging the vocals. And that's the difference, I think, between writing really big tunes.
Yeah. You know what? I have heard that before. An artist named Anada told me your idea of the song is so much more important.
It's the idea and the concept. And it's so much less. People get caught up in these little things with the music, like, oh, my mastering chain, is it -6 LUFS or whatever? It's like, dude, that doesn't matter. Old Town Road has one thing on the master channel and it's just a good song. Like, I know the guy that engineered Old Town Road, and there's like, it's just like a YouTube beat and it has like one limiter on the master or whatever. It's just a good song and it's a good idea. And so you got to really change your perspective through writing songs and ideas, not nerding out on like, oh, I got to make this like crazy bass sound, although that does help sometimes. But you know what I'm saying?
Yeah. I mean, I've been a fan of dance music for more than 20 something years, but I still would not know that nuance, right? Like,
that's cool.
So it's like the average fan does not care about those things that a producer is going to nerd out on.
Not at all.
You know what I mean? And so that makes so much sense.
They're going to go home. They're going to go home on the way from the rave and they're going to go sing the vocal to their friend in the car, right?
Exactly.
So that's where it's at.
Yeah. Yeah. It's a great point. So, last question for you. We've talked a lot about creativity. We've talked a lot about discipline. How does an artist balance the two? Because they seem at odds with each other.
When you're a professional and you want to be a professional musician, you just wake up and you got to do it every day. So whether or not I want to make music this week, I'm going to try to do something, right, involved with the music. If I don't feel like making music, particularly today, I'm going to download a bunch of music and organize my DJ crates, maybe start digging for samples, updating my sample library. It's like, I'm going to do something related to that today, regardless if I don't feel like it, right? And you just got to show up. Like, think about it. If you have any job, right? If you're a professional athlete, it's like, you got to go play the game. It doesn't matter. You're going to play the game every single week. So you have to just figure out a way to get your routine set up so you can show up and do it every week. Because there's really, if you want to be a high performer and be competitive at it, you just have to figure out what that routine is. And so, yeah, again, it comes back down to just like, getting the fundamentals right. And the fundamentals are, I know this sounds so basic, but do you get 8 hours of sleep? Are you eating healthy food? Do you exercise good? Do you have a routine that allows you to, I actually had a student that I mentored, and when I started working with him, I think he had like 7,000 followers. And by the end of it, he had 80,000 followers, and he's basically getting booked every single weekend now. And he has a full-time day job. And you know what this guy does?
What?
He wakes up at 5 o'clock in the morning. He goes to the gym. He comes home and he makes music for almost 2 to 3 hours before he even starts work at 9 a.m. That's the level of commitment and rearranging your life sometimes that you need to have. And so I understand people have jobs and they have different circumstances that might not allow them, but you can always find a way. And to me, when he told me that he wakes up at 5 a.m., he goes to the gym before he even starts making music. That's crazy, man. That's the level of, discipline, routine that you need sometimes to be successful in this industry. And it's crazy. I see him getting booked now all the time. Like, I use Instagram and, I still follow him and I talk to him, and he's playing all over the US still, like every weekend now.
Amazing.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
And, yeah.
It really goes to show there are no excuses. We all have different circumstances, and, it's not an equitable industry by any means, but we can all make it work some way, somehow. That's really inspiring. Thanks for sharing that. And thank you for this conversation. It's been such an honor. When artists give back and mentor the way that you do, I love having you on, because it's just really important for people to hear from, people they look up to.
I'll appreciate it. Well, thanks for having me on, Olivia, and it was great to chat.
You know what I love most about this conversation with Henry? It completely flips the script on what we think prepares us for success in music. Those side quests, as Henry calls them, the random passions and competitive pursuits we have growing up, they're not distractions from our path. They're actually teaching us the blueprint for excellence. So if you're feeling like your journey doesn't look like everyone else's, or you're wondering if your non-music experiences matter, they do. They're all part of your unique story, and they're all teaching you something valuable. Thanks, guys, for listening to another episode of Elevated Frequencies. If you enjoyed this conversation, please rate, review, and share with another artist who needs to hear it. I'll talk to you next week. Stay elevated.